Ancient wisdom says that the only devil living on this earth is human stupidity. Every person must fight stupidity. But how? Through the development of morality. To be a philosopher is to be a highly moral person and to live a high-quality life. But how to improve morality? Through knowledge and improvement of character. In the video, we will reveal 7 essential character traits of a true philosopher. With the help of them, a real philosopher studies and gets to know the world around oneself, accumulates knowledge about the world, and thereby makes morality one's life basis, which always protects him or her from stupidity. A philosopher must realize the importance of education. The life of a philosopher is the personification of the power of enlightenment and the fight against illiteracy and ignorance. By acquiring literacy through education and getting rid of ignorance, the philosopher discovers own morality and strengthens own character, which allows oneself to withstand the difficulties of everyday life. High morality allows a philosopher to reveal the depth and breadth of one's worldview. Where there is a broad outlook, there is no stupidity and aggression. A philosopher must be a highly educated individual because one is an educator, and through education he or she masters science, discovers philosophy, and understands religion. With the help of education, the philosopher disciplines the mind, learns sanity, consistency, and logic. A disciplined and prepared mind gains sanity. It is sanity that can identify stupidity in people and things and divert the philosopher from the destructive influence on the orderliness of one's own life. Through education and culture, through which the philosopher ennobles own passions, the learner discovers own innate perfection. Innate perfection exercises power over the lower and dark instincts in every person. This is how the learner overcomes stupidity and acquires morality. This is why education plays a key role in the life of any true philosopher. Friends, if you want us to reveal more deeply the need for education in a philosophical sense and its key importance in the life of any person, write to us about it in the comments. The topic is actually deeper than it might seem. A philosopher must understand the importance of consistency. When fulfilling social obligations, a philosopher must be consistent in words, thoughts, and actions. Consistency is the basis of orderliness. An orderly life is a noble environment in which morality and sincerity develop. Order in life is the antidote to stupidity. If a person is not able to complete what once started and achieve success through a sequence of actions in the material world, then failure awaits such a person in the spiritual sphere of own life. The ability to complete a task protects the philosopher from wasted energy and from dissipation of mental abilities, in which a person gives up something in which strength was invested and which could not serve the good of both the person oneself and surrounding people. Thanks to consistency, the philosopher develops own character and strengthens own spirit, which leads the learner to a highly moral life. Morality protects the true philosopher from stupidity and superficiality. A philosopher must be aware of one's duty to society. Social life is not a burden for a true philosopher. The learner does not live in fantasies about an ascetic life and a life fenced off from society. Against, every philosopher perceives public and social life as a necessary and natural condition for the development of the discipline. Discipline should not be understood as the exhaustion of moral or physical strength through meaningless and grueling exercises. Discipline is perceived by true philosophers as the ability to steadfastly accept all the trials and vicissitudes of ordinary everyday life. Philosophical life requires consistency and discipline from the learner, believing that only the learner who day after day encounters injustice and deception, but continues to fight for own goal, maintaining aspiration and absolute faith in the best and success, is capable of great achievements and life filled with intelligence, clarity, and well-being. Discipline cultivates morality in the philosopher and saves the learner from disappointment and despondency. Frustration and despondency are the result of unrecognized stupidity in the affairs of daily life. disappointment and despondency weaken the spirit of a philosopher and can lead everyone away from the path of knowledge. Discipline and a responsible attitude towards obligations in social life increase a person's morality and save oneself from stupidity and mediocrity. Thanks to a deep awareness of one's duty to society, the philosopher learns to make decisions and take a responsible attitude towards one's own life. By facing dead ends and finding the right solutions based on discipline and responsibility, a philosopher is able to bring own life into order and allow oneself to spend more time on moral and spiritual development. Thanks to self-improvement, the life of a philosopher becomes incompatible with stupidity, disappointment, and despondency. A philosopher must understand the paramount importance of the motive. There is a rule in philosophy. Before power can be given to a person, one must become extremely indifferent to it. A true philosopher is indifferent to power over other people and is faithful to power over one's own lower nature. A person who comes into contact with philosophy and tries to use it to solve one's personal problems or improve one's financial situation suffers a complete collapse and loses the morality of one's own life. Instead, stupidity, pain, and disappointment come into the life of such a person. True philosophy leads a person to a life of high moral values through service to the common good. True philosophers are distinguished by modesty and shyness, regardless of the heights they are able to achieve. The philosophical life bestows upon man a greatness that does not offend anyone. Greatness is based on morality and sincerity, the home of which becomes the living and feeling heart of the philosopher. The life of a philosopher is a reflection of sincere and pure aspirations to study the truth and work for the benefit of every person, despite the pain of disappointments that a philosopher can encounter on one's difficult path. There is no place for stupidity in the life of a philosopher, because one's motives in serving people are sincere and pure. A reckless attitude towards one's own life is evil for a philosopher, since one feels the responsibility assigned to oneself before people, which consists in the need to work in the name of goodness, beauty, and truth, the desire for which the learner carries throughout own entire philosophical life. Recklessness and stupidity lead the philosopher to death and therefore reduce the opportunity for other people to get closer to a better life through the works of the philosopher and one's noble character. That is why the philosopher fights recklessness and stupidity by increasing awareness of the value of life and the need for high moral principles in life. A philosopher must beware of any kind of parapsychological phenomena and phenomenality. Philosophy is not intended to endow the philosopher with supernatural powers and set him or her apart from other ignorant people. The task of philosophy, on the one hand, is to cultivate high moral and ethical qualities in the character of the philosopher. On the other hand, philosophy helps the learner to live an orderly life in which there is faith, rationality, and clarity, and there is no stupidity, the desire for emotional stimuli and phenomenality. Philosophy develops the intellect of the learner and opens up his or her sensory perception. Developed rational and sensory intellects are the tools of cognition of a philosopher who, step by step over the course of many years, learns one's own internal forces and finds their reflection in the world around oneself. Such an approach makes it impossible for a philosopher to pursue thrills associated with leaving the body, flying into the unknown, and other lures that are common on the path of spiritual knowledge, and lead many learners away from the truth toward the edge of the abyss of ignorance and misunderstanding. An ordered mind and developed feelings reveal in the philosopher the only parapsychic ability that can be called claircognizance. This ability manifests itself in a purely intellectual form when one learns philosophical truths by the method of insight. This is not accompanied by emotional outbursts, but knowledge arises in the philosopher's mind as if by itself and becomes understandable to oneself while maintaining clarity of thinking and sanity. Such a process can be called intuitive comprehension. Intuitive comprehension is the result of the painstaking and sincere daily work of a philosopher over many years based on the moral and orderly life of the learner, in which there is no place for stupidity and recklessness. A philosopher must understand that with increasing knowledge, responsibility increases proportionally. Unlike an ordinary person, a philosopher does not have the luxury of thoughtlessly using knowledge and not taking into account the responsibility that knowledge imposes. Stupidity deprives a person of insight. It is insight that can, as it were, suggest to the philosopher the consequences and the full weight of responsibility from a future decision. Sincerity, high morality, and insight are the pillars that allow the philosopher to bear the burden of responsibility for one's actions and the results of one's decisions. A philosopher, first of all, must be a researcher who has the right to responsibly speak and discuss the results of own research without losing common sense and adequacy. The researcher does not impose own vision. One tactfully and unobtrusively shares it with those who are ready to listen and hear. There is a rule in philosophy. If we have not yet reached a level mentally where we can determine in advance with a reasonable degree of certainty how honest and pure the person to whom we want to reveal philosophical secrets is, it means that we ourselves are not developed enough to possess such secrets. In the absence of insight and confidence, it is better to remain silent and refrain from talking. This will allow you to avoid stupidity, wasting energy on unnecessary words, and taking responsibility for unnecessary actions. Hear, see, be silent, says the Latin proverb. In most cases, a philosopher must adhere to the call of this proverb. A philosopher must maintain a constructive mental attitude. Life does not always correspond to our expectations and ideas. At the same time, philosophical life is the personification of rationality, efficiency, and order. Therefore, a philosopher does not waste time, energy, and effort on complaints and reproaches, but works to create better conditions, applying all one's mind and all one's zeal. One of the manifestations of stupidity in ordinary human consciousness is a feeling of self-pity. This feeling is incompatible with a highly moral life, as it makes its bearer angry, aggressive, unhappy, and limited. Instead of changing the situation, a person with a feeling of self-pity criticizes the situation. This is how one exhausts oneself and others. This is how a person becomes pitiful. The philosopher refuses the feeling of self-pity thanks to the ability to accept responsibility for everything that happens in his or her life. The right tool for this for the philosopher is one's own selfless, sincere work, high morality of driving motives. Do not forget that a constructive life position, a healthy sense of humor, and a happy smile can protect the human spirit even from the most severe shocks. At the same time, the philosopher cultivates in oneself not thoughtless optimism, but the ability to consider in all occurring events a single law according to which universes, stars, and people live. In religion, such a law is called God's will. The ability to see a single law in everything that happens gives the philosopher the feeling and confidence that everything in life works to achieve the good of every person, including oneself. People who are accustomed to complaining and feeling sorry for themselves lack a sense of justice. Absolute faith in justice is the core of philosophical life. The power of this core protects the philosopher from despondency and stupidity and makes the philosopher the master of one's own destiny. The presented 7 characters, qualities of a philosopher are the moral basis on which every seeking and cognizing person relies. Contact with the spiritual part of life requires high moral and ethical qualities from a philosopher. It is high morality that does not allow stupidity, licentiousness, and recklessness to penetrate the ordinary everyday life of a philosopher. An ordered philosophical life can reveal in everyone his or her inner forces and reserves, as well as ennoble and elevate the motives and life attitudes of any person, directing his or her aspirations to serve the good, kindness, and beauty. That is why the philosophical life is the only right choice for every person. Philosophical life is the path to the secrets of the stars, the home of which is the spiritual heart of a reasonable person.